The NBA playoffs are here, and it's been a great start for the sharp bettors. I'm Joe Duffy of OffshoreInsiders.com, and along with Troy West of TroyWins.com, we are going to preview the Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday portfolio. But before I do get to that, please remember, if you're not already subscribed to Sportsbook Reviews videos, I'm sure that you are, but in the very unlikely you're not, make sure you subscribe now. You have any questions, comments, etc., just leave them in the comments section, and feel free to share this video, retweet it, etc. That says you want more great stuff like that. Well, Troy, as I said, it's been a pretty good start to the NBA playoffs, at least for me, hopefully for you, but we got 3 days of action. I kind of like the fact, maybe from a selfish standpoint, the NBA likes to spread out the games too. Of course, they always want, a full Saturday and Sunday slate, but now we're going to have games too spread out from Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. We'll start out with Monday, Miami at Philadelphia. Philadelphia minus 6.5 and 215. San Antonio and Golden State. The Warriors are minus 9.5 and 205.5. And of course, the home teams have taken the 1-0 series lead. Anything that stands out to you about the Monday card?
Yeah, Joe, one game that, the bettors and the sharps out there may disagree with, but I actually do like Miami to bounce back. I don't think they're going to win game 2, but they were leading that game at halftime, even actually led going into the fourth, and then Philadelphia went on, obviously, an unbelievable surge. I like Miami to bounce back. I think 6.5 is too many points in that one. I think the public's going to be jumping all over Philadelphia in game 2, and why not? They've been on an absolute tear, and as we talked about in our earlier videos, they've been absolutely killing teams. But I think Miami's a good team. They're well coached by Spoelstra. I think they bounce back and at least keep this game close. So I think that's a good bet on that one. Golden State, San Antonio, to me, that's a stay away, although Golden State has looked good. Greg Popovich definitely not talking as if Kawhi Leonard's going to be back, so I'd like to think he's probably out again and probably won't be back this season. I think the Spurs are kind of at that reality stage of we're not getting past the Golden State Warriors, but 9.5, a lot of points to go against Greg Popovich. So in those two games, that's a pass for me, but I do like Miami getting points in that game too. I think Spoelstra gets that crew ready to go, and I think it could be a potential letdown spot for the Sixers.
And hopefully I did mention in the last video. If not, it's really only important here anyway. The so-called zigzag theory, where it used to be a thought that you should always bet on the team that lost the previous game. They're going to bounce back. And in fact, last year was the worst year ever for that theory, 22-42. Luckily, I never fully subscribed to that theory, but then I dug it in the computer and found out there's some legitimacy where teams do bounce back under very specific circumstances. One of those is especially if they are off of a blowout loss, like the Miami Heat are, and I know even some believe, especially if it's just a blowout loss in game 1. So that would certainly say to go with Miami, though conversely, the outlier for the zigzag has always been, even when the zigzag did have some legitimacy, even when it hit at about, the 53% going back years and years and years, a home team going for consecutive home wins, that was usually kind of the outlier when usually the team off of the win was pretty good. Still, all in all, the biggest difference I see between the 76ers and the Warriors, kind of a non-analytical thing, well, definitely a non-analytical thing, when you look at a team's motivation to blow the other out. 76ers, I think, are always going to be in statement mode. They're going to have something to prove, especially with Joel Embiid out now. It's inevitable that he is going to come back supposedly very, very soon. My guess is they're going to try to buy time. Brent Brown's going to try to buy time until the Sixers lose. I wouldn't be surprised to see if Embiid stays out. So yeah, if Miami wins tonight, I would say Embiid, based on everything I've heard, will probably be back for game 3. If the Sixers sweep at home, wouldn't be surprised if Embiid is held out. But if there is one team that has, I think, motivation to pull out that 20 to 25 point route, and they did win by, I think it was 26 in game 1, it would be the Philadelphia 76ers, where conversely, the Warriors here against the Spurs, Warriors, all they need to do is win. There is literally zero statement to be made if they win this game by 50. And as you said, Troy, Kawhi Leonard, it does sound like he is definitely out for the playoffs. So unless, this is the biggest game of possum ever by Greg Popovich, and you never put anything by Greg Popovich, but it looks like there is no chance that the Spurs are going to get their best player back here. So Golden State seemingly as well on their way to a split, even without Steph Curry. Obviously, once they got Kevin Durant last year, they could lose one of their 3 stars in a first-round series, and especially against San Antonio, a team that they're minus their best player. It's not going to make a big difference. So it definitely looks like the Spurs are well on their way to a sweep here, but Sixers continue to be the most intriguing team. The one thing I do want to point out, I'm guilty of it too. We all keep pointing out how young the 76ers are, especially with their 2 best players or superstars, albeit with one of them's been out for the last 9 games. But 76ers, they signed Redick in the offseason, then they got Ilyasova and Bellinini, of course, in those trades, and those guys were tremendous. They had, they both had great games off of the bench. Well, Redick, of course, had a great game as a starter. He was a high scorer. Sixers do have their share of veterans, and maybe I got to remind myself because of my Adrian Barbeau theory, where it's top heavy. Sixers got a whole heck of a lot of depth, and I've been saying it for the longest time. I still think they are the best money management play to bet on a team to win the NBA championship. I think they're very legitimate contender, and as I said, Embiid is coming back. But yeah, two pretty interesting games tonight, but I think the favorites, different motivational factors. One team has plenty of reason to make a statement, the other team doesn't, and of course Golden State is the big favorite. And generally, big favorites do pretty well in the postseason, and in fact it's right on 9.5, which is really the demarcation point. 9.5 point favorites at home do pretty well in the postseason. But still, all in all, the Warriors don't really have the big motivational reason to pull a blowout unless it happens, as I like to say, organically. The Tuesday card, Washington at Toronto. Toronto laying 6.5, 215. Milwaukee and Boston. Boston, all right, I'll admit, got my lucky cover. I did have Boston. And wow, what a great, it's very rare that I'm on the right side of a bad beat. I know we gamblers always tend to remember when we're on the wrong side, and then we forget when we're on the right side. But things are going well. I've been good and even lucky lately. That's one of the reasons I wouldn't be undefeated, obviously, if it were not for that backdoor cover. But 2.5, 197. New Orleans and Portland. Portland's laying 6.5 and 214. Anything jump out about the Tuesday card?
Yeah, Joe, we had one loss over the weekend, had a great weekend as well, but our one loss was actually that Portland game. And I'm going right back to them. I like Portland to bounce back. They could not have shot any worse in that basketball game and still only came up short 2 points. McCollum played arguably one of his worst games of the year. Lillard was a no-show, and Anthony Davis obviously brought his A game. I think it's going to be a role reversal in this one. This is a do-or-die game, so to speak, at home for Portland, and I just can't imagine this team shooting that poorly again. This is a good Portland team. They're at home, do or die. I think these guys bounce back, and I think they get a big, big win tonight, on Tuesday night against the Pelicans. And then, yeah, like I said, Washington threw everything they possibly could at Toronto and still fell up 8 points short. So I don't think things look too good for Washington. I like Toronto to continue their ways in that one. And then, as we talked about previously, I liked Boston in this series. They get the game one win and the cover, like you said, lucky cover, but Brad Stevens knows what he's doing. I mean, this is a guy that's been winning consistently with or without superstars. Like I said, a lot of public was all over Milwaukee, and a lot of people on Milwaukee to win the series and even advance forward. But I like Boston to get it done again. This is a really good team still. They've got young guys stepping up. They've got the veteran Al Horford, who looked great, hit some big free throws down the stretch. I like Boston to get it done, and I do think they're going to finish out that series here next time we talk.
And I'll just explain it just one more time very briefly for the rest of the video. I'll just refer to it simply as the zigzag outlier. But those of you who believe in the zigzag, even when it was at its best, teams off going for their second straight home win have been pretty good plays, and that would certainly apply to Toronto here against Washington. Going with favorites that are pretty bad teams against the spread based on the ATS margin, a good play that would apply to Toronto. And ice-cold underdogs are a good go against the Wizards. Although, as I said, with John Wall back, maybe Washington is a little bit better than their record. Washington and Boston. This I was very curious. Teams off of the same series, overtime win, 5-2 in the playoffs, but It's a pure split. And what I do mean is the home road splits. When the team is playing at home, they're 0-2. So if a team coming off an overtime win is a great play on the road, and in a small sample size, they have yet to win at home. So of course that would favor Milwaukee. And one might say with Boston's injuries, maybe going into overtime with the thinned lineup, that would hurt the Celtics a little bit more. And then as far as New Orleans and Portland, yeah, the Blazers up at the Pelicans, going against a hot against the spread team in the playoffs is 112-80, and that would benefit New Orleans here. But it just, so that's about it for the Tuesday portfolio. But, you know, some very interesting games again. But for those of you who still believe in that zigzag, as I said, be a little careful when going with the team going for consecutive home wins. Now on Wednesday, we'll wrap up the game twos, Indiana and Cleveland. Well, that's developed into the most interesting series, at least after game one. At least at this moment, maybe the most interesting series. Utah and Cleveland, by the way, is 8.5, 209. Utah at Oklahoma City. OKC minus 3.5, 206.5. Minnesota and Houston laying 10.5 and 212.5. I said Minnesota could make this series interesting. They did wind up getting the cover, but Houston did wind up winning. But still, the spread is a huge point spread. Troy, anything that stands out on Wednesday?
Yeah, actually, all three of these games stand out to me. They got me scratching my head. Oklahoma City was actually my biggest play of the postseason, game one and the series. They looked outstanding, and Paul George really stepped up. And I think that's what makes Oklahoma City so intriguing is Russell Westbrook can step up. As much as we hate the guy, Carmelo Anthony can step up, and of course Paul George can. So they're only laying 3.5. I think they're going to get that win against Utah again, especially at home. Oklahoma City is a great home playoff team. And then, like you said, the most intriguing matchup, that Indiana Pacers, we didn't know what to expect from Cleveland. We thought they could come out and sweep, or they could get swept. I mean, seriously, this Cleveland team has been so bipolar and have really brought no consistency all year long. And in the Indiana Pacers, they look hungry. I mean, they've got players. Let's be honest. They've got, Oladipo's been playing great. Sabonis looked good. Even Stevenson, of all guys, looked good. I would not be surprised if the Pacers can sneak out another one or get the cover. LeBron James just looked checked out in a lot of ways. We'll see if he brings his A game in game two. He's going to have to, or this thing could be 2-0 in a hurry. And then, like you said, the third and final game, the Minnesota Timberwolves. This is a really good basketball team that hung around with Houston. I think talent for talent, they're right there with Houston. So to get double-digit points, I'd have to side with Minnesota until I see Houston pull out a huge win. But, I do think Houston wins that series. But like you and I both said, Minnesota can hang around, and double-digit points is a lot. So those three games, very intriguing for Wednesday.
I did look at the updated series lines. The Pacers are still at plus 180 for those of you who think that maybe it's over-adjusted because of LeBron James. Look, death, taxes, and LeBron James going through the Eastern Conference. That seems to be three of the certainties in life. But as Troy said, watching game one, the Pacers look pretty tremendous. So, do you base it on the long-term history? Or is this, the year that Cleveland's very vulnerable, and it would make sense that they would be? They've had, of course, they made that big trade in the middle of the year, and it's been debated whether or not it helped the team or hurt the team. But one thing was for sure, they made that trade for a reason. They hadn't been playing up to expectations this year. And then, of course, Tyronn Lue, when he left for about a week, did that kind of screw up some chemistry? So, yeah, look, when you look at it historically, a LeBron James team is more vulnerable this year than it was in previous years, whether it was in Cleveland or Miami. Still, all in all, I don't think I would take Indiana at plus 180 to win the series, even on that adjusted line. But again, I wouldn't be completely shocked. I guess it's the quote-unquote intangibles that really scare me away from that. But, based on anything other than the LeBron intangible, you would say Indiana would be a great bet to win the series at plus 180. But then again, that LeBron thing I cannot overlook. He is just simply that good. The Jazz in Oklahoma City, one of the reasons I was kind of stuttering over yesterday, I put my notes. under the wrong game, and I was just saying how it just doesn't seem that the odds makers want to give Paul George and Westbrook, my Adrian Barbeau theory. Paul George, look, we said the other video, he seems to have found the fountain of youth. I think this is an incredibly underrated 1-2 punch. Line is 3.5, which is like the normal home court advantage, and the zigzag outlier would apply to OKC here. Timberwolves and the Rockets. I went to Bovada shortly before we did this video. I wanted to see what the adjusted series line is because I had said that Minnesota I thought was going to be a good bet before game one at 15-1. Now you figure the odds would be even higher after that game one. And Minnesota, they did make it quite interesting. As far as the spread's concerned, I would say exactly about the Rockets what I said about the Golden State Warriors. They're the one overwhelming favorite. No statement whatsoever to be made until, if everything is expected, that collision course in the Western Conference Final. So Houston doesn't have any motivation to blow out Minnesota. But, another reason that I think that Minnesota is capable of pulling off an upset. Derrick Rose, you talk about a guy who's going to be much more valuable in the postseason than the regular season. So Minnesota has a decent combination of guys with upsides, plus veterans who are going to play some more minutes in the postseason. As soon as I get off, I'm going to go at some of the other sports book I use, and you've heard me say a million times, I don't like to do futures bets because I don't want it to, subconsciously affect my ability to make game-by-game adjustments. But if I can get Minnesota at least 20-1, I'll probably bet about 1/10 what I would on a normal side. It just seems way too tempting for me. Now, again, the zigzag outlier, though, that I talked about would apply to the Houston Rockets. And going with hot against the spread teams in the playoffs, a very good 112-80, and that would apply to betting on Minnesota. So, going to talk to the powers that be at SBR. No, we normally during the regular season we do a Monday through, we do it on Mondays and Fridays, but because of the dynamics of the postseason, we'll come back on Thursday and take a look at some of the games 3 that are going to be played. And Troy, before we go, why don't you tell everybody about what they can get at TroyWins.com?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. We had a great opening weekend going 4-1 on single games. Then our big series bet is on Oklahoma City. So off to a good start with that one. We'll see how that progresses through. But come take a look. We're covering the NHL playoffs right now, MLB, and obviously the NBA. That's TroyWins.com. We're happy to give you a free trial if you come take a look at what we're doing.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, Troy, about the NHL. I do have an incredible system in the NHL playoffs, so I am releasing some NHL playoff picks. NBA undefeated in the NBA playoffs. In fact, going back to college basketball and the NBA regular season, 35-11, my past 46 basketball picks. A heck of a run. I've been winning. I'm approaching 30 years of winning in the business, and currently at my home at offshoreinsiders.com. As I said, make sure you subscribe to all these videos. Troy and I will be back, and we will preview the games 3 right here with Sportsbook Review.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to our channel. Now, we've put a lot of work into producing all these free videos, so please help us out and keep all our content free for you forever by simply liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. Now, not to mention, a visit to our industry-leading website will warm the hearts of all our SBR employees, especially myself. Now, the links are over there to the left, so do check those out. Thanks for watching.